The Patriots are one win away from the Super Bowl. How do they get a win in Denver in the AFC Championship game on Sunday? Let's break it down.
He's sacked, intercepted, into the end zone, touchdown, Patriots!
All right, everybody, it's Evan Lazar. It's Paul Perillo, who is filling in for Mike Dussault, who is on the injury report this week with an illness. So
he wasn't ready.
We called you up from the bullpen this week. He wasn't ready for the AFC Championship game. Paul, it's pretty cool to be in this spot right now. If you're the Patriots, didn't really see this coming. The other thing that we didn't see coming was Bo Nix getting injured last week in the divisional round, about an hour after the game ended. Sean Payton coming out and breaking that news. Just what do you think this means from a couple different angles? But let's just start with the difference between Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham to you.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of respect for Sean Payton, so I do have a fair amount of belief that he'll figure out what's best for Jarrett Stidham and how to make him successful so the game doesn't bog down. You know,
Right.
It's not one of these situations like you had with Houston with C.J. Stroud really sort of hand-tying D'Amico Ryans. You can't win when your quarterback plays like that. I don't think we'll see a situation like that. The similarities, differences between the two, obviously Nix is more athletic. He's going to be able to run. He's going to be able to create, I think, off script a little bit more than Jarrett Stidham. But Stidham might have a better arm, in terms of his arm strength, his ability to get the ball downfield a little bit. So I think there's some pluses and minuses. Obviously, I think the lack of experience for Stidham is hard to ignore.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing to me is just a little bit of anxiety of how do you prepare for a game like this when you really have no tape. And I know Mike Vrabel said that they're kind of going back to 2023 a little bit, to his last start in Denver, maybe a little preseason, a little bit of Bo Nix, and just kind of trying to combine it all. I'm very curious to see, though, you mentioned the athleticism. A big part of Bo Nix's game is throwing on the run. He has the highest amount of throws on the run this season of any quarterback, and then those design rollouts with the pocket moving as well. And I don't know how you predict how Sean Payton's going to call this game, but the other factor that I would say is that Denver has not really been a run-heavy team for the most part this year, except for the fact that they might be getting J.K. Dobbins back, which I think is pretty big for this Broncos offense.
I would agree. And the early indications were that he is tracking to try to return. He's eligible to come off IR, and he got some practice time in. The center, too, it's Luke, help me out. Wattenberg, right? Yeah. So he also looks like he's ready to play. I think that could be a big boost for them because they're going to need to take the pressure off Stidham. So if they can run the ball a little bit more effectively, Dobbins is a guy who averaged 5 yards a carry when he was healthy. So since he's been gone, it hasn't been the same. They have more of a pass catching back in the rookie Harvey.
Yep. Harvey.
Sort of taking his place. So those kinds of injury things, the Patriots have been sort of on the positive side of those. The flip side for Denver is trending the other way, so maybe they can get some good news too, and it's more of an even battle.
Yeah, you mentioned Wattenberg. That's a big part of their offensive line at center, especially because their backup center, Alex Forsythe, is also hurt. So if he doesn't play, then they're going to be on their third-string center if Wattenberg isn't ready to go. But they have 2 first-team All-Pros on that offensive line with Bowles and Miners at right guard. And that seems to be the way that they kind of script this game, is take some of the pressure off of Jarrett Stidham, run the football, hopefully with a healthy J.K. Dobbins. And I'm really curious to see how this Patriots defensive line that's dominated the line of scrimmage in the first 2 playoff games. This is the best competition that they're going to face in the playoffs in terms of offensive line. It's the best group.
Evan, is it too simplistic to boil it down to that? Because the Patriots defensive line has gotten, let's call it 3 check marks in the first 2 playoff games. They've been so dominant.
Yes.
If Denver's offensive line is able to neutralize that, I mean, is it too simplistic to say if the Patriots defensive line can continue to play the way it has, that's kind of game, set, match?
That's how I feel about it. And I think it's also just, I'm interested to see how good this defensive line actually is, because you have these first 2 playoff games. I think you could make a case that the Chargers and the Texans have the two worst offensive lines in the NFL, especially with the injury situations for both teams. So what we've seen has been dominance from the Patriots, but if they go out there on Sunday and they do it again against this Broncos group, then we really are in a position where you're starting to talk about this defensive line being a real problem. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but if they do win on Sunday and they face the Seahawks or the Rams in the Super Bowl, it just makes you feel a lot better about their chances in that game. If you can say, yeah, that travels, that defensive line has traveled all the way to Denver too. Let's move over to the other side of the ball and talk a little bit about Drake Maye. And I think something that we've been spitballing around during PU this week and everything is he's kind of due for having an MVP Drake Maye performance. Didn't really have quite that level of performance yet in the playoffs in the first two games. Do you see that happening this week against the Broncos?
I think it'll be better. And, he's got to clean up the ball security issues. And I think if you just boiled it down to him passing, and I know the numbers haven't been as great passing, it's not the 70+%, it's down in the, the low 60s and whatnot, but he has been able to make throws periodically, but the ball security at 6 fumbles is just entirely too many. So if he can clean that aspect up, I think he's talked about it a lot. That's why I have some confidence that, he's going to go into this and saying, I need to play to our strengths. Our strengths right now are our defense.
Yeah.
So keep the ball out of harm's way, and I think that improves the production just with that alone. So, yes, I do have faith that Drake Maye is more like the guy that we saw during the regular season than the guy we've seen in the postseason.
He feels a little due for it. Yeah. And you look at this Broncos defense and, over the back half of the season here, they have started to tail off just a little bit. They have some gaudy numbers, though. You look at whether you like the regular traditional metrics, total yards, points allowed, but even like the pressure rate numbers and things like that. They like to blitz a lot. So it's a different type of challenge than what they had last week against Houston, when Houston was kind of just rushing 4 and dropping into their standard coverages and just beating you with, structure and talent. This Broncos defense and Vance Joseph, their defensive coordinator, will cook it up a lot more and send a lot more pressure from different places than what they saw with Houston. So I think there are a couple of things, though, that being said, that I expect the Patriots to attack, or I guess I should say matchups. Riley Moss on one side of the field.
That will be one.
Patrick Surtain obviously plays the boundary side. I don't think you want to throw too much at him. I looked this up earlier this week, Paul. On deep passes, so passes over 20 air yards, Patrick Surtain is 1 for 13. He's allowed 1 catch on 13 targets on deep balls all season long. So that's not the side that you want to test on Sunday. But Riley Moss on one side, and I have seen, Hufanga, who's a really good box safety, good hard hitting safety, but he has gotten beaten in man coverage a little bit against tight ends and things like that. So far this season. So that's two matchups that I expect the Patriots to hunt, because the Broncos are going to play a ton of man coverage. They're going to dial up pressure, I'm sure, on Drake Maye. And I'm with you. If he can protect the football and he can keep it out of harm's way and just let the defense keep doing its thing against the backup quarterback, you like their chances.
Yeah, I do. And Riley Moss is a guy who not only gets picked on a lot, but has been called for a ton of penalties. I think he has 8 pass interference calls against him this year. So when you have, it's common when you have a guy that's that good, the number 2 corner gets tested probably a little bit more often than normal. And it's been a struggle for him. And when you talk about the box safety, Fanga, and I just think Hunter Henry's kind of due as well. He's been a little quiet, the last few weeks. So that combination gives me a lot. I think the offense, when you turn the page to the offense like you did a couple minutes ago, I have so much faith in that side of the ball right now, bouncing back. Even though they're playing against a statistically dominant defense, I think they are leaking oil a little bit. And I think this is going to be a big bounce back game for Maye in the offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do, one last thing on the Broncos defense. They have gotten run on a little bit in recent weeks. Buffalo definitely had some success running the ball. Now the Bills have a great rush game, but I think with the way that we've seen Ramondre Stevenson kind of come into his own in the second half of the season, they have a chance to run the football a little bit against the Broncos as well. Last thing for you, I know that you have a little bit of a take on this. Just the spot of traveling to Denver.
The one area that worries me a little bit.
Mile High. Now you're the favorite. You're the biggest road favorite by the betting line in the history of the AFC Championship game, I believe. 5.5, I think, is the spread right now. Just what do you do if you're Mike Vrabel if you can't play the nobody believes in us card anymore?
So I think that you play up the Denver thing. Like, no one thinks you can win in Denver. And like there's nothing to be afraid of playing there, and you sort of maybe try to play that kind of thing up, kind of the anti-Belichick. Belichick would ignore it completely, like the whole Denver aspect, and just hope it just went away. I think Vrabel was sort of acknowledging the altitude and preparing for it and whatnot. I think you focus on that because there are a lot of people that are spooked out. There are a lot of people that have pointed to the Patriots 0-4 postseason record in Denver, which obviously doesn't have anything to do with this game. So maybe Mike plays into that and says they don't think you can win in Denver because no Patriot team has ever done that. We're going to show them how.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do like, the team. A lot of people, I think, had questions about how early they would go out to Denver. And Mike Vrabel already knew on Monday morning after the win over the Texans all the science behind how quickly you can adjust to altitude.
Because he listens to PU. We broke that.
That's true. We did talk about that a little bit. So he's on top of it. Stretch is on top of it, I'm sure, as well. I think the two of them probably have already looked into this. And one of the things that we heard from some of our listeners that are much more well-educated about this kind of stuff is it's actually better to go late than it is to go early if you can't go
if you can't go weeks in advance to get acclimated, you're better off waiting as long as you can.
Yeah. So that's what the Patriots will do. All right. So pregame show an hour before kickoff, right?
Yeah, we'll be 1:45.
1:45
on Sunday, and hopefully we can get Deuce off the shelf because it's the AFC Championship, Mike, and we need you. We need you back.
We need all hands on deck for the AFC Championship game. All right, that's going to do it for this week's preview. Hopefully we'll be back next week to preview the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Pregame show 1:45 Eastern time on Sunday before the 3 o'clock kickoff in Denver. We'll see you guys then.